Pat, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Four little boys at home, and people think my work life is crazy, but it's actually my home life is crazy.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I spend way more time with four boys right now. Just there's always an activity or something going on.
Well, I understand that in addition to all the work you've done up to this point around teams and executive behavior and organizational behavior, you also have a workshop out there around families and applying.
Yeah, I wrote a book called The Three Big Questions for a Frantic Family, because I realized that for all the time I was putting in my own company and with my clients' companies, helping them run better, I wasn't using any of those things at home. And if my family is more important to me than my business, which it is, I didn't know why I wasn't doing more to operate it more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
So I put together a book which uses a lot of the ideas we use for our companies, but of course in a way that applies to family. And I wrote my first family book.
Now, has there? I've been thinking about this, and I've been wondering if there's been any resistance to the idea of applying business principles or management principles to a family unit, and that the family, so many people take so personally, whereas the business or management functions so professionally. Do you find that at all, and how do you reconcile the two?
Yeah, there is. The people who buy the book and read it, the family book, have really benefited from it and enjoyed it. But there is definitely a reticence on the part of people to open up their themselves to thinking about how they run their family. I think it's just so big and so personal that it's tough to make that decision. And it's the reason why family books don't sell near as well as business books. Mm-hmm. Because people are just not as open to relooking at the way they do things. But in business, they're kind of always hungry to find a different way to do things.
And what is it that you think turns some people around who might initially be reticent to the idea?
I think that when they just realize that they're experiencing a lot of pain,
yeah,
and that when they finally realize, I don't think I'm living my life the way I really want to, and I don't think this is the right way to do it. When they finally get to that point of frustration and pain, they're open to looking at new ways of doing things, and I think those are the people that have benefited the most.
Okay. And can you give just one example of how one might apply a management principle to the family and more effectively managing the home life?
Sure. We talk about whether or not a company has core values. We think it's critical that a company knows what values make it unique, so that it knows how to hire and how to make decisions and never to violate their core values. And then I realized that all families talk about family values, but they don't really ever articulate what they are. So we take people in that book through an exercise for determining what their family values are. What are the one or two or three things that make them unique and separate them from the family next door, or for that matter, from their cousins or brother and sister down the street. Mm-hmm. And once they do that, then we say, look, when people come to you with opportunities or questions or activities or other decisions you need to make, the first thing you should do is say, how does this fit within our values? Mm-hmm. And usually we're reinventing the wheel. Somebody says, do you want to buy a cabin up in the mountains, or do your kids want to play travel water polo, or do you want to go on vacation to Europe this summer? And we make those decisions in a vacuum without thinking about, well, what would our values inform us the right decision? Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that we have.
I'm struck with how open you are and upfront you are with the fact that family is clearly your number one priority, yet you've managed to create a wildly successful consulting firm and have a number of critically acclaimed books to your name. I think one thing that a lot of people are curious to understand, I certainly am, is, in short, how do you do it?
Well, I've been very blessed. From the very beginning, faith and family had to come first. Mm-hmm. And I had a guy sit down with me before I started my firm. And he was an executive, and he said, Pat, do you have kids? And I hadn't started having children yet, my wife and I. And I said, no. He said, when you do, make sure that you actually spend time with them, because I have a 17-year-old, so I don't even know it. Mm. And I just remember thinking, I do not want that to happen. Mm-hmm. From the very beginning, we decided at the firm that we were going to stay small and we're not going to do work outside the country, mm-hmm. which we've done very little of, and we were not going to grow bigger than the size that we could enjoy and continue to live our lives the way we want to. Mm-hmm. And so I think that has been very helpful, because it's forced us to think strategically about how we're going to get the message out and how we're going to help people with this stuff without growing too big. Mm-hmm. And the other thing, I just feel very thankful to God that I've been able to do that and still have an impact, but not at the expense of my family.
Mm-hmm. And
so it's pretty much just making that commitment up front.
And I'd imagine too, there's a certain risk involved in doing that, and I sense that there's a risk involved in making the kind of jump you made, particularly if family is important. The jump you made from kind of the more secure corporate setting of Bain Consulting, Oracle, to kind of jumping into your own into doing your own thing.
Yes, and I have to say that I did that before we started having kids, but we were married. And my wife's support and confidence is probably the reason why I did it, because she was like, absolutely, you should start this company. And had we had children, or had my wife not been confident, it would have probably been difficult to do. But she said, you should definitely do it. She took what little money we had set aside for a house, because we hadn't bought a house, and said, use this to start the company, you'll do fine. And so it really, she played a huge role in that.
And what were you thinking at the time? I mean, how many? Do you have doubts? Were there points in time where you thought, no, I'm just gonna stay on the secure route, on the secure path rather? What was the psychology like? What was it like going through that?
It's a great question. I think that at the time I had a secure job. I was at a company called Sybase, and I was an executive there, and I had this really great team that I had hired to put together. But things were changing at the company, and it was becoming apparent that it might not be a long-lasting thing. I'd been there for 5.5 years, and in the world of high tech, that was an eternity. And so I got a job offer from all people, Steve Jobs at Pixar, who's at Apple too, and he offered me the job to run human resources there. And then I got a job offer from Eric Schmidt, who's now at Google, who at the time was at Nobel, to come in and work there. And so I was thinking about changing companies, and my wife and I were weighing all these opportunities, and I just realized I'm not going to leave my staff. I have this wonderful team of people. And so I decided, it was time to take a risk and start our own consulting firm. So that's what we did. And we were scared, but we also realized if we could just make enough money to pay our bills and get to work together, that would be enough. And so we didn't have any delusions of grandeur, and we weren't trying to get to someplace down the road. We just wanted to be able to say we had our own company, it was working, and we were helping other companies. And every step since then has been great. And every time something happens, we're like, this is great. If it stayed like this for the rest of our lives, we'd be so happy. And as a result of that, I think we really enjoyed every phase of the journey and didn't get too caught up in where it was headed. So I think that we were scared, but we had not low expectations, but we were going to be satisfied with just the ability to run our own firm. And good things happened.